Hey guys, it's Greg. In this video we would like to show you our impressions of new upcoming expansion to Perdition's Mouth, Abyssal Rift. So this is a game that we discovered some years ago in our local shop, and it's one of our favorite games. I mean, I think we put this game on one of our tops. I think maybe it was like 2019, I think. So it was one of the games of 2019 or 2020. I don't remember. It's amazing dungeon crawler, extremely hard, but with amazing mechanics. So this is a base game we know and we have, but there is going to be this expansion. That is Spire. I'm saying it's an expansion that could be basically an standalone game, but it needs you to have this Abyssal Rift. So it's an expansion, but in the end, amount of the content that you're going to get in this game could be a standalone game. So in this video, we are going to show you some of the components and some new mechanics that are implemented in this extremely big expansion.
A few years ago, at the local shop in Warsaw, we discovered Abyssal Rift, Perdition's Mouth, and we fall in love with its mechanics. Story-wise, we were embodying a group of not that obvious heroes facing an ancient evil lurking deep beneath the Earth's surface. Dark fantasy, obscure, sinister, full of despair, even gore. This is the world created by Abyssal Rift, reminding us of retro RPG novels like Temple of Elemental Evil. Abyssal Rift was also addicting when it comes to the mechanics. The action wheel, the very center of our planning and strategy, requires planning ahead at least several turns and makes the whole game very challenging. And by challenging I mean one of the most ambitious scenarios we have ever encountered, where we lost dozens of them before we managed to rightly use all of the options the game gave us. And no, the high difficulty is not the effect of randomness. Abyssal Rift is free of dice. Interesting, fully asymmetrical heroes with their own decks of cards, and the different characters shown during the story part of the game were super memorable and simply fun to play. When the core game was suffering from some smaller issues like lack of polish in some places, with repetition and misspells on cards and scenario introductions, it managed to build a faithful community around it, and Dragon Down Productions, publisher of the game, launched revised edition. Now, years later, we not only have a chance to come back to the core game and its expansions, but moreover, we can start our journey with Spire, a massive expansion community was waiting for. Although it is expansion requiring the base game, its size, new mechanics and separate long branching campaign make it bigger than many other standalone games on the market, and Spire will be the main focus of the rest of this video. Mentioned long branching campaign is one of the biggest novelties here. Previously, plot was served through quite a short story introductions for each scenario. Right now we get the full book of paragraphs. What helps to stand out plot here are the heroes, the dialogue between them, and the huge focus on showing the different characters, motivations and even beliefs. Interaction between protagonists reminds me a lot of Vox Machina, one of the best shows of the last years, for me at least. The story of Spire starts with our party meeting a few years after the events from Perdition's Mouth. A meeting organized by Sima, a halfling priest, accompanied by the mysterious ghost-like persona named Guide. From this moment, action is speeding up with every single paragraph, and quickly we find ourselves between the clash of three factions: dwarves, fays and cultists. The very first scenario of the game pushes you toward making a choice with each faction you want to align with, and none of them are crystalline pure, so it's not an easy choice. And choices through the campaign will be many, because the story here branches a lot and you should finish the game at least 3 to 4 times to get to know it from each perspective. Soul writing is also good, plenty of references to the core game, but not necessary if you want to start with the Soul Spire as the first campaign. I also appreciate minor references to other games by Dragon Dawn Productions, where a dwarf faction called here Collective 13 is also tied up with Factory 42, Eurogame by Dragon Dawn Productions. Different factions not only influence the story part of the game, each faction is hostile towards each others, while monsters are hostile towards everyone, including players. When we start the game as neutrals, by allying with one of the factions, the attitude of the rest of them towards us changes. In practice, it means you can lure other factions to fight with each other while you reach your destination safely, or you can block one way to force monsters to go towards hostile factions instead of you. Different sides of the conflict also mean plenty of NPCs, which some of them can join you as heroes depending on your choices. Soul Spire, together with the Fae faction, introduces a new size of figures, tiny ones. Tiny minis can pass through the bigger minis, which for Abyssal Rift is a huge thing and often a factor deciding on whatever you are going to lose or win the scenario. Facing is now important too, and it matters if you are attacking from the front, rear or flank, providing a boost for both attack and defense. To help you be more agile on the board, heroes can also jump or even sometimes fly. With the core game, first were activated all of the heroes and then enemies. With Soul Spire, this becomes much more sophisticated thanks to the initiative track represented by the cards around the board. Some of them represent our heroes, some enemies, whereas others represent events specific to this particular scenario, similar like we have with Age of Conan by Monolith Games. Adding events to the initiative track is a simple but very thematic solution, making our missions much more immersive. Another new feature are sigils, which are usually spread around the board and work entirely differently depending on the scenario you are playing. For example, with the very first mission, the board has sigils in 5 different colors, where the blue one turns off the force field, while the rest of them allows you to randomly teleport yourself or fall into the trap. Sigils are the other mechanics helping to make every single chapter totally different from previous ones, because with the core game, your main goal was usually to reach the exit on the other side of the board. Perdition's Mouth already offered a variety of highly distinctive heroes to choose from, especially with the previous expansions. Soul Spire takes it to a totally another level, and the pool of truly asymmetrical heroes is not only bigger, but you are going to also unlock some of them during the campaign. Of course, only if you meet specific criteria or you ally yourself with specific factions. I really like this old school approach and another nod toward the classic CRPGs. Nowadays, characters in video games are mainly bought through DLC. In the old times, you need to work for this by pursuing side quests, often hidden from the main path. Good old times. Going back to heroes available at Soul Spire, most of our old gang is available again. So we can play as Olazabal, a she-dwarf with very bad manners, long beard, and plenty of nasty devices to cut through enemies or boost and heal the rest of the party. Bastian is a stoic, usually well-organized veteran working as a tank here, while Eliza and Raven are both elves. Eliza wields magic and can teleport, while Raven is an assassin with a very rude attitude. I can fully understand that the original Abyssal Rift could be too hard for some players. Dragon Dawn Productions understand this as well, and this time they decided to be more forgiving with the scenarios. It's still a challenging game, but not that hard that you are going to bounce back from it. It was already implemented in the original core game, and here is taken even further. Every single scenario feels and plays entirely different here. Goals are always different, often a few to pick from, and you need to focus on them and surviving, not on the mindless combat, because this can quickly put you in a situation without an escape. Depending on your size table, you can have no problem with it at all, or struggle a bit for the free space. When Spire maybe doesn't require so much room as folklore the fiction, for example, then it definitely needs a proper place for a huge board surrounded by the cards creating the initiative track. As I said, this is a huge game and a lot is happening here. When managing our heroes is very clear and transparent, then the situation on the board is not necessarily the same. Why? Because rooms and other tiles you put on the main board do not always match together graphic-wise, and sometimes it's hard to figure out if you can move this or another way. It's the prototype, so fingers crossed that this will be addressed in the final copy of the game. For dungeon crawlers, it's usually a choice between creating engaging, distinctive and complex scenarios with long setups, or a much quicker one but more grindy and repetitive. Dragon Dawn Productions picked the first, more ambitious way, and when it allows us to experience some very cool chapters, the setup is a bit longer than current standards. The publisher promised an excellent insert that stores all components in a meaningful way, so you can speed things up. Let's hope he will keep this promise. It seems Spire is another epic journey we can't wait for to start. Abyssal Rift Perdition's Mouth was already in our top dungeon crawlers, and every single new feature implemented with this massive expansion works for us. Initiative track with events, even more fully asymmetrical and memorable heroes, more ways to interact with the elements on the boards, highly distinctive scenarios and the goals protecting us from repetitiveness. All of it adds more and more layers of strategy to the game. Add to this well-written, branching campaign with 3 factions and unique NPCs, and you get a game not only great, but also different than others. Let's hope the long setup and board transparency will be solved with the final copy of the game, and we will get a flawless product. That's all for today, see you at the next game, and don't forget to subscribe our channel.